The anomalous is hiding around every corner, so surely the safest place from these nightmares is inside an SCP Foundation containment site. Right? Wrong. You might find unspeakable monsters that have fed on the aftermath of atrocities. You might get trapped in the web of the three most diabolical researchers the Foundation has ever known. And you might just unleash something that destroys everything you've ever loved. These are the top 3 abandoned SCP facilities you never knew existed. The horrors inside Site-13, SCP-1730. So here's the funny thing. Not even the SCP Foundation knew that Site-13 existed. Which is to say, as far as the Foundation was concerned, there actually is no Site-13. And this made it particularly confusing for them when Site-13 appeared in Big Bend National Park, northwest of the US-Mexico border. That's the kind of thing that the Foundation feels duty-bound to look into when it happens. Frankly, it's probably good practice for the organization to be aware of which ones of its bases exist or not. But even the decades, or centuries, depending on who you ask, of Foundation history could not prepare them for the pure horrors that lurked inside. And the worst of it wasn't even caused by anomalies. Oh no, it was caused by the humans who were in charge of securing, containing, and protecting them. The initial group sent into the base to investigate never came back, due to the hostile anomalous hazards rolling out the welcome wagon for them inside. The base seemed to be constructed out of extremely unstable dimensional fabric, with topographies that warped and shifted constantly, preventing anything inside from escaping. The place did indeed seem to be a defunct Foundation containment site, one based on plans for a Site-13 that had been drawn up in the past but never actually seen through. That was the first clue to the truth on what happened here. Site-13 was a Foundation site from a different universe, a universe where things had gone terribly, terribly wrong. But how did a cursed site from a worse timeline find itself in the middle of an American desert? As the Foundation sent in several mobile task forces to investigate, and to save the previous mobile task forces that had already been trapped there, they began to piece together where the other dimension's reality had diverged from their own. There, the Foundation had failed to stop a giant, anomalous terrorist attack that caused a huge number of deaths in a highly populated area. So they had their dominance over the world of anomaly containment wrestled from their hands as punishment. The Foundation effectively became under new management from personnel that had risen through the ranks of the Global Occult Coalition. That's the UN's answer to the SCP Foundation, but with one major difference. While the Foundation seeks to contain anomalies, the GOC believes the only real solution is to destroy them. A man named Elliot Emerson was given a high-ranking position, namely as the director of the brand new Foundation megasite, Site-13. Emerson was, by all accounts, a boring bureaucrat of a man, someone more eager to suck up to his superiors and amass power than following some moralistic higher cause for keeping the public safe. By utilizing anomalies and discarding them as soon as they'd fulfilled their purpose, the technology in this other world quickly became far more advanced than our own. This allowed them to contain anomalies as powerful as SCP-001, the Gate Guardian, and SCP-2845, the Deer, inside giant containment chambers in Site-13. One of the most powerful results of this experimentation was a reality-destabilizing device called Thresher, which seemed so powerful that they were all a little nervous to even turn it on and see what it did. And then, the horrors unfolded. Not because Thresher had been turned on, but because of the evil already lurking in the hearts of Director Emerson and his loyal, sadistic underlings. In order to meet the efficient goals of anomaly disposal set by their superiors, they turned Site-13 into an extermination camp, trying to annihilate scores of anomalies with maximum efficiency, even benevolent human anomalies whose power posed no threat to anyone. But it wasn't just the anomalies who got this appalling treatment. It was any of the compassionate Foundation employees still stationed at Site-13 who dared speak up on behalf of the creatures, the ones that Emerson and his goons were quite literally forcing into a giant industrial blender and then burning. Some researchers, such as Dr. Cimmerian, were literally dragged outside the site and shot dead by Emerson loyalists. The inmates were running the asylum, so to speak, and there was absolutely no oversight coming from above. As far as the overseers were concerned, Emerson was doing a fantastic job meeting all their neutralization quotas. So any methods he saw fit to keeping that level of productivity were considered permissible, even torture and mass murder. But at a point, things went south for Emerson too. He flew too close to the sun in his overuse of the blender, putting a non-indexed anomaly called Leech Boy for his ability to absorb other people's blood through his skin via contact into the machine. Leech Boy survived the first part of this process, and because the fire hoses were on the fritz that day, he ended up sitting in a giant pool of anomalous blood for just long enough to absorb it all. The result of this was that he became an immense, terrifying leech monster too powerful for them to contain. He rampaged across the site, releasing the other surviving anomalies in the process, and the whole site fell into chaos. Nobody was more terrified than Emerson himself, who was a coward all the way down to the bone. Seeing no way out and hemmed in by monsters eager to make him suffer for all he'd done, he turned to Thresher. It was his last desperate hope of escaping the hell he'd created, but it made it even worse, dragging the whole site to our dimension in its most dark and corrupted form, where space and time made no sense and the most twisted monsters reign. Emerson, for his trouble, will remain in the site forever, no matter which dimensional plane it's on. He's strapped to a giant stone wheel atop a humongous humanoid creature, suffering eternally for his sins. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But at least most of the Foundation teams actually escaped Site-13. Nobody has ever escaped our next terrifying abandoned site. The Twisted Experiments of Area 37, SCP-1765. Some of the Foundation's biggest problems seem to come as a result of them sticking their hand into the cookie jar when they really shouldn't. And the horrors that unfolded in Area 37 are no exception. We'd tell you to ask the Foundation staff still trapped inside, but believe us when we say that you really don't want to get close enough to the living nightmare that is Area 37 to actually ask. That's because while this area started as a Foundation containment zone, it's now the private laboratory and playground of SCP-1765, also known as the Sisters, or in the words of the official Foundation documentation, it's a Type 4 corporeality unstable territory. In plain English, that's a place you really don't want to visit, and the Sisters are responsible for that. Some have drawn the conclusion that this twisted sisterhood might be the embodiment of the Morai from ancient Greek mythology, also known as the Fates, the three maidens with total knowledge and power over the past, the present, and the future. Whether or not that's true, we can tell you that the trouble started when the Foundation located and raided a group of Serpent's Hand members embedded in a city near Area 37. Most of the Hand escaped in the process, but the Foundation did leave with 3 seemingly innocuous prizes that the Serpent's Hand had gone to unusual pains to protect: a small wooden loom, an enamel needle, and a glass eye. And during testing, the Sisters, who had seemingly been bound to these artifacts, emerged, taking the form of 3 translucent, gray-white specters of vaguely feminine appearance. They immediately displayed not only sapience, but extremely powerful reality warping abilities. In essence, their mere presence has the ability to ambiently break down the boundaries of reality within their proximity, so they can then mold it like clay. But the Sisters, in their own strange and awful way, saw all the Foundation researchers around them as kindred spirits of a sort. In the words of the leader of the Sisters, dubbed SCP-1765-1, "Seeing how meticulously you kept to the scientific method, we venture that we could be of most use to you if we do the same ourselves. Our abilities in that field are substantial after all. To assist you, we will conduct several useful experiments on your behalf and deliver you the data. We believe this is the beginning of a wonderful partnership." And so began the endless cavalcade of surreal horrors that Area 37, and literally everybody inside it, is still experiencing to this day. The Sisters are the researchers, the Foundation staff are their unwilling test subjects. And these 3 curious ladies had plenty of questions they were more than eager to see answered. Area 37 no longer obeys the rules of time and space, it only obeys the Sisters. So what kind of experiments are the three of them conducting in there on all of the eternally trapped Foundation personnel? Well, in one area, run by the first sister, the staff are given rulers and pencils and instructed to measure the exact length of a huge number of working pipes weaving through a large auditorium. But before all the lengths of those pipes can be cataloged, the room will completely reorient, rendering all their work useless and forcing them to start again. These people in this area have been trapped performing this experiment for years on end, and their minds are as twisted as all that terrible pipework now. In another area run by the second sister, the dubious experiment plays out like a macabre game show from hell. Foundation Mobile Task Force members and captive Serpent's Hand members are separated into two teams and forced to run around a stadium while fiery projectiles are thrown at them, resulting in a savage fight for survival. But nobody wins in the end, as the second sister always crushes both teams to death with giant metal hammers after each game, and then the experiment starts again. But the third sister's experiment may be the strangest of all. The people in this experiment have been forced to choose between two different flavors of ice cream for literally thousands of hours. They then are made to eat an entire tub of whatever flavor they choose before a new flavor is selected for them. These started off as relatively normal, but soon progressed to terrifying nonsense flavors like Meerkat Marshmallow Madness, Tranquility, That Shoe You Always Liked, God's Wrath, and Redacted. The people in this experiment have been doing it for over 10,000 hours and have tried, by some estimations, over 200,000 different flavors of ice cream. The third sister's only research note on this nonsensical experiment was, quote, delicious, because of course it was. But at least the horrors of Area 37 remain in Area 37, as the sisters haven't shown any particular designs on expanding their operation. That's not the case for our ultimate abandoned Foundation facility. All it could take is one visitor to make it lights out for us all. Something's wrong at Site-81, SCP-2935. Foundation personnel knew something was terribly wrong when on April 28, 2016, Site-81 received a dire SCP Foundation distress signal from Site-81. The message is as follows. This is an automated emergency broadcast from the SCP Foundation and your national government. One or more of our sites is experiencing a communication breakdown, likely due to a containment breach of unknown magnitude. All citizens are ordered to stay in their homes as containment teams work to secure the breach. This message will broadcast from April 20th, 2016 until the message simply skipped and repeated from there. There was no indication whatsoever that this signal was a glitch, some technical error, or a prank. Given that a message like this would only be sent out in a truly catastrophic situation, it warranted some serious investigation. A mobile task force traced the signal to a nearby limestone cave in Joppa, Indiana, and the team decided to do a little spelunking to see what was on the other side. To their horror, it was more than just an abandoned Foundation facility on the other side. It was an abandoned world. A place where everyone and everything was dead. Their lives had simply, instantaneously, and simultaneously ceased, from the largest cosmic being to the smallest microbe. Even intelligence-like entities, like AI constructs, were shut down in the wave of absolute death. Even creatures thought inert or utterly unkillable, like SCP-173 and SCP-682, were simply dead in their containment cells in Site-81, which seemed to be the epicenter of it all. This was a seemingly unprecedented event across the entire known multiverse, and the mobile task force traversing this dead world needed to find out why. And to some degree they did, but it came at a terrible cost to them all. In the files of the dead Site-81, they found records of them intercepting a distress signal from a different Site-81, just like the one that they had received. And just like had happened in their world, it had been traced to a limestone cave in Joppa, Indiana, where death itself seemed to lurk. And the trigger was the exploratory mobile task force bringing it back with them when they returned. Realizing that they had to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect everything they'd ever know, the mobile task force detonated the on-site nuclear warhead at the dead Site-81, erasing the site themselves and the signal it had sent. Having received this last message of what needed to be done at our Site-81, the Foundation filled the entire cave with concrete and kept it under heavy guard to this day. But how do we know that the limestone cave in Joppa, Indiana is the only portal out there? How do we know that Site-81 is the only one screaming for help? A perfect lure in a dead world. How do we know that death won't just find another way in? Now check out SCP-2935, Oh Death, and more epic SCP stories you can't miss. Or SCP-1730, What Happened to Site-13, the full story compilation, for more.